Hello, everybody. Welcome to my favourite segment, Passion Chats. And I'm very, very excited to have someone who's been really profound in my life in helping, generate and grow my passion of running. We've got Chris White of Go Run Australia. Hello.
Hey Nat, how are you?
I'm really, really good. And how are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good.
That's good. And the reason why I've got Chris on, not just because of his passion of running and coaching others in running is, I hear a lot from people, and particularly in this group, that they would love to learn how to run or at least get started, even if it's not marathons, even if it's just doing a short run. And so I thought, who better to bring on and talk about that than my own run coach.
No, it's cool to be here, and hopefully we can help a few people along the way. That sounds good.
Yeah, great. So I might just kick off because I've assumed that your passion is running.
Yeah.
So probably better to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So tell us a little bit about your passion.
So yeah, I mean, you are correct in thinking that my passion is running. I guess I was thinking about this before we started chatting, and I was thinking that actually I think my passion, most people would see it as running and triathlon as well. I do a few triathlons and I've done some long distance stuff as well, and I really enjoy that. But I think it's actually slightly going back a step further than that, and it's actually around just moving and being outside. I wouldn't say I'll try anything, but I'm pretty open to trying, whether it's open water swimming or getting on a long bike ride and exploring. And I think for me there's something around adventure and exploring and just being outside and moving that's my passion. I can't quite articulate it much better than that. It comes out as running and triathlon, and mostly kind of long distance stuff, but I think it's more around this sort of adventure and exploring with other people.
Yeah, I love it. And so where did this come from? Has this been something that's been ingrained in you since a child, or is it, really morphed into something as you've gotten older?
I think it's if I take a few steps back and think about, I guess my dad, he he ran a few marathons. He ran London Marathon a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times. When I would have been maybe 10 or 12 years old. I saw it as a nice day out to go and go into London and be with all the people and watch the race and everything, but I don't really remember any sort of passionate inkling there about running. I do remember him hobbling down the stairs of the tube stations, thinking, oh wow, that looks like that hurts, so maybe we shouldn't do this. But yeah, I think the one thing that sticks in my head about his running anyway was that he used to meet up every Sunday with a group of guys. And I think there was about 4 or 5 of them, and people came and went through this group, but they met up every week, rain, hail or shine, and went out into the woods and ran around this track. Now, interestingly, they all moved like houses, and they all moved to different countries, in fact. So they lived in Switzerland at the time, and then they moved to the UK, and they all moved within about probably half an hour of each other, and still can meet up to this day on a Sunday morning and go for their long run. They're all got dodgy knees, and they're all in different stages of life, obviously. But I remember that, and I went for a bike ride with them every Sunday, and I remember that very clearly. And I remember this sort of camaraderie and this thing that running brought them together and allowed them to talk. And I mean, if we framed it in our own, in this sort of era, we'd say that's excellent for your mental health. It's excellent for your physical health. But I just remember it was a bunch of mates who got together and ran, and they seemed to enjoy it. And I enjoyed going along with them on my bike. So yeah, I think that's probably where it started. I don't think, like when I was at school and at uni, I never ran at all, really. I remember supposedly studying for exams when I was about maybe 18, and I would procrastinate by going for a run around the block, which was, I think it was 3 miles, so 5K. And I tried to persuade my next door neighbor to run with me. And she brought her sister along, and we kind of started that, once or twice a week, but it's basically to get out of studying for exams. But yeah, I guess probably from that point onwards, I never really ran until my probably mid-20s, late 20s. And then moving to Melbourne kind of just blew it all up. And I started going to my local park run and started there and met all these just incredible people. And then, started running longer and longer stuff, got a coach, and it's all snowballed from there. So I guess that's my story behind, why I run and why I'm kind of passionate about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that message around that connection with others and, having a passion where you can share it with other people. And that is really the underlying thing for Find Your Passion Day, was that it's about finding something that you love, but then what relationships can you nurture or connections can you create with others around you, so that you're not just nurturing the physical element, you're the emotional and the mental side of things as well.
And you're not engaging with people who hate what they're doing either. You're engaging with people who are also passionate, so it kind of goes tenfold, rather than just being a normal discussion. You got two very excited people or two passionate people about that particular topic, so it goes through the roof. That's why people sort of look from the outside at people who are particularly passionate and go, oh my god, I don't understand how that's such a thing for them. But that's definitely the case in running and triathlon for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so what led you to becoming a run coach?
I think I basically saw with my triathlon, actually, I saw that the value that I got from a coach. I basically was in a situation where I wanted to do two things. I wanted to run Boston Marathon, and I wanted to do an Ironman triathlon, and I wasn't sure how to balance the two. And I couldn't think it through. I just couldn't think it through. I sat on the sofa with articles from Runner's World, magazines, books, everything, internet, plans and all that stuff. And it was super stressful to try and figure this thing out, because I cared a lot about doing a particular time and going for it and doing it well. But I got to a point where I was just in my own head, just chewing this thing over and over and over for, an hour or so a night, just going, oh, what can I, improve on? And actually went to a football game and bumped into somebody who had a triathlon coach, and he said, oh, well, you should meet my triathlon coach. And having that conversation, and then the subsequent kind of, well, I mean, I've had a coach ever since, so kind of proves that I value it. But having that shared understanding, but also trust in somebody to help you with your goal, the accountability side of it, the somebody to share the stress with, and say, I feel like crap today. What do you want me to do? My body's not doing this right. My head's all over the place. I've got a cold, whatever it might be. To have somebody help you make decisions, I've just found infinitely, valuable. And I think one thing I have observed is that we do tend to find coaches in other parts of our life. So people have business coaches or mentors, and tennis players have coaches. All these amazing, professionals have a help of some description. And I don't see why then that doesn't apply to us with our running. Just because it's something you enjoy doing doesn't mean that somebody else can't help you. And that coaching can take different forms. But yeah, I mean, you could probably talk as well about, the value that you get from coaching, but that's kind of what I see it as.
Yeah, that definitely, you're talking to the converted here. And there's a lot of value in having someone someone there to support you and guide you. And I think we really lose that. You know, we go through school with, you know, teachers and mentors, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're out in the big wide world by yourself, and you don't have that. And so yeah, I've really grown, and not just because I'm a coach myself, but I've really grown to value the benefit of having a coach, and also what coaching can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me, if you had a newbie come to you and they said, Chris, I want to learn how to run, what do you start with?
So this is not an uncommon question, first of all. I do tend to coach a fair few people who are not necessarily brand new to sport or to activity, but they are getting back into it for some reason or another. They've maybe had, so I coach probably 85% women, and a lot of those women are coming back to running after a break, either because of the kid, or they've, you know, decided to prioritize their business or their family, or whatever it might be. They've had a break of some description, and getting back into it, as we all know, is pretty tough. And I think myself and my fellow coach Kylie are both kind of really quite passionate about seeing people not go through this cycle that we see all the time, which is, you know, you get back into it, you do 2 weeks of good work, and then you discover that you've got a little niggle, and you think, oh, okay, I'll not run today. One day turns into 3 days, which then you lose the momentum, and then so it sort of kind of goes from there. Oh, I wasn't very good at it anyway. You lose your confidence, and that cycle repeats time and time and time again. I actually had a lady who's just started with me about 3 or 4 weeks ago, who said she'd been going through that cycle for 30 years. And my challenge was to try and break it. I mean, no pressure at all, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first thing I would say is to start where you are at, or even behind where you're at. And I think that means, basically, if we talk about the physical side of it, I think that means if you can walk around the block or you walk the dog, that's fine. That's where you're at. If you can only run to the end of the street, that's fine. That's where you're at. If you run a marathon, that's fine. That's where you're at. Start with where you're at, but not where you want to kind of be. Keep it in mind, but don't try to go out and run or perform or do the thing, whatever, like you're already there, because that's what ends up in our injuries a lot of the time. People go too fast, too often, too hard, too soon. And I guess my job a lot of the time is keeping the reins on a little bit. So I hold people back for a bit longer than they might feel comfortable with. But my purpose, if you like, for that first, I'd say it's minimum first 3 weeks, but probably up to about 6, is to be conservative and to give you momentum in your training. And that momentum is more powerful than any one particular run or anything else, really. Feeling that momentum and that habit starting to come together is infinitely important. And I don't think that matters really whether you're a beginner returning to run, a super duper marathon runner, or whatever sport. I think momentum is so important in all of this stuff. And you build momentum through being consistent. So my job, if you like, is to start where you're at or just behind, build that consistency with you. And that could be, you know, a 20-minute walk one day, a break the next day, go do your Pilates class the Thursday, etc. It's to give you a structure and accountability, if you like. So those are the sort of overriding, the things that kind of sit across: consistency, momentum, you know, generating that habit and being somebody there to support you through that, what is quite a tricky, you know, first 5-6 weeks, let's call it. It can be frustrating. You either want to go faster or harder. You're feeling things in your body that are are different to what you felt for a while. You know, a lot of people, particularly women who've had babies, are coming back and their body is different. You know, we were talking the other day to a lady that had 3 kids, and she said that she reckons her shoe size went up 3 times in the 3 kids. So your body is actually fundamentally different to where it was when you were back doing whatever.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the kind of the overriding thing. Some of the stuff I see on the practical side is helping people break down their runs. So I am a huge advocate of the run walk technique, and I really don't think it's something that is purely for beginners, or people shouldn't think less of themselves because they have to walk. I use it as a 3-hour marathoner. I use it in my Ironmans. I've used it for probably 2 or 3 years now, and I swear by it. You recover better. You are able to train the next day. You're able to keep consistent and momentum and all those things we just talked about. So helping people structure those sessions, so 4 minutes run, 1 minute walk, or 1 minute run, 1 minute walk, whatever it might be. And that, I think, takes the stress off people. They go, oh, I just have to run for 1 minute and then I can walk. So doing that is, I find, infinitely, it's really, really, really helpful. And then talking to people about things like, you know, shoes and breathing, and how to use your watch, and, you know, what type of shoes should I get, and what surfaces should I run on, and all that sort of stuff is what I guess I'm there to try and help people do, I guess. If you want to delve into any of that stuff, I'm happy to.
Yeah, no, and I love all of that, you know. And the number one thing I hear from people, because obviously I'm a runner, and they see what I do, and they're like, you know, I tried to do a 5K run. I've never run before, but I tried to do a 5K run and I couldn't do it, so I'm not doing it, you know. And it's the whole concept of starting small, and we're our worst own enemy, you know, because we are so caught up in that let's go big or go home, and, you know, if we're not pushing ourselves and we're not doing it right. So what are some of the challenges that people you've worked with or work with, you know, face when they're sort of getting over that hurdle as a beginner or as someone who's coming back to it?
Yeah, I think the mindset piece in here is really important. I think that if I had to, you know, not everybody that I've coached, but a very big number, one of the biggest issues they have is around comparison. And we all do it. And we compare to other people. We compare to previous times. We compare to our old selves. And it's really, really dangerous, because you were, in many cases, a very different person then. And I think that issue of comparison is one that, you know, I don't have a one answer for that one, unfortunately. Each person is different. And, you know, I see that the other stuff stems from that comparison. So we compare to a previous time, or that, you know, I used to be able to run 10Ks without stopping. That's a pretty common one. And now I can't. Well, that's not to say you can't in future, but where you're at right now is this. And my job is to get you from A to whatever. And I think that and you'll know this better than me, but like, people create goals based on comparisons as well. So I used to be able to run 10K. I want to be able to run 10K. And I think there's no reason why you couldn't go further, faster, different. You could do it on trails. You could do it with a backpack on. You could do whatever. Like, and you know that it doesn't have to be a particular distance or time or what have you. So I think we can kind of get led down the path a little bit, possibly by comparing to other people, but also comparing to our previous selves. And I guess one of my jobs is to try and encourage people to think of a few different things that they might be more passionate about. And because it's infinitely easier to coach somebody that is passionate about what they're doing, rather than somebody who's kind of doing it for such and such a reason.
Yeah.
Getting back to a particular distance or weight or what have you is a very strong motivator. 100%. I absolutely get that. And for me, I've set those types of goals before. Like, I have no real issue with them. My job, I guess, is to question whether there is something a little bit deeper, and you'll know the techniques to try and elicit that type of response. It might be asking why are you doing this? 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 Keep asking that question. And some of the responses I've had to those questions have been, whether heartbreaking or insightful or fascinating. People who want to do these things genuinely for their kids to be proud of them. They want them to help their husband out. They want to do this. I had one where she was a carer for her husband and had no time to herself, and this was the one time that she could spend time on her own, doing something that's productive and clearing her head. And so there's all sorts of reasons. So I'd encourage people to, in the process of setting those goals for your running, set them as something that you care about. And it might not even be running. Like, people, if you don't want to run, don't run. Like, I've got no issue with that whatsoever. And, plenty of people that we have the discussion, they get part of the way through the program and they go, well, I'm not enjoying running at all. And so we try and make a few changes and what have you, but sometimes the passion isn't there. And therefore, the passion might be for traveling or, going to try whatever new sport or new endeavor. Or I've got a guy who recently just took up playing guitar and is loving it. Yeah. And he was running with me.
Yeah.
So it's not, my job is not to make you run. It's to try and nurture that running thing that you've got, and build from there, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. And before you started talking about the why, I wrote down why, because people say to me, I'd love to run. And I said, why? But I'm a really big believer in that, we do things for a purpose. And when you come back to that, most times it's that intrinsic motivation, and how do we use that to propel us forward? I think is really powerful as well. And I've had this conversation a few times around Find Your Passion Day, that it's not about finding something for the sake of finding something. Yes, it's about encouraging people to try things and see, do they enjoy it? But if they don't, then try something else. But I think with passion, we know what it is already deep down inside. And I hope through this day that it encourages people to maybe just tap into that, just even for a little bit. So we'll finish up shortly, but one thing I would love to know is, what are the feelings that people get, and what do you experience, or what do you witness when you've had someone who's returned to running and all of a sudden they've achieved a running goal? What's the flow and effect?
It's huge. I mean, there's a fascinating study from years ago, like 50s and 60s, called the Framingham study, which is around basically what's the impact on people around you of doing something. So in this case, I went for a run. What's the impact of me running on my my dog, my neighbor, my cousin, my whoever? And basically, as is unsurprising, the impact gets less the further away from me I go, but there is still an impact. So if I go for a run and the person 5 doors down sees, oh, Chris is going for a run again, that has an impact. It sits there.
Yeah.
So imagine what it's doing for your kids, your husband, your wife, your cousin, your whatever, your little nieces and nephews. I mean, I've personally, for me, my sister's had a baby boy, about 13, 14 months ago now. And one of the things I am passionate about is being an inspiration to him to be active. Now he's 14 months or whatever, but there are signals between, you know, now and 7 years old. There's a lot of research to say that that's the age where, you know, they are sponges and they absorb what's going on around them. So for me, whenever I go to Sydney to see my sister, I make sure we're outdoors and we're active and what have you. I have no idea whether it's going through his little mind, but I hope it is. So I think kind of bearing that in mind, that sort of impact of what you do on other people around you is really important. And I'll share a story with you from this week. So we've been coaching a group of women who work for Jean Hales, the Women's Health Foundation, and we coached them through to Melbourne Marathon Festival. And these guys were all, you know, they all wanted to do something. They signed up to the 5K or the 10K, and I think one did the half marathon, I think. But these 13 women all had different stories, all have different fitness levels, etc., different injuries. And one of them, she has type 1 diabetes. So exercising and food and balancing all of that is very tricky. Has had it for 30 odd years, and now we come in and say, oh, let's go for a run and let's try and get you moving. And trying to manage that with her was fascinating. So for me, I learned a lot as a coach. But she did the 5K. She stopped 3 times to prick herself and do the blood work that she needed to do on the route going around Melbourne. And we interviewed her on beginning of this week about her experience, and she was beaming, absolutely beaming, about, you know, what she was able to achieve and how her husband's now started going for walks with her, how, you know, the camaraderie of her team around her was amazing. And this is somebody that, you know, has more obstacles than most in running specifically, you know. And I sat there with my coach Kylie, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. A, the barriers that she's overcome. B, that she did it and was smiling. And she did it in 37 minutes, I think it was, the 5K. And she absolutely loved it. So in terms of the emotions you asked about, I get pride in seeing, you know, the work that we've done together happen. Just like, you know, you running Chicago Marathon, huge sense of pride, not necessarily because of a time or what have you, but the way that we go about doing this stuff is what gets to me. And I think that's pretty much, you know, what I look for. The other people, you know, in terms of their own goals, it's, if the why is right, the reaction is amazing. The reaction is usually ecstatic and then, you know, tired and what have you. But I think experiencing those emotions is amazing. And it's a big part of why I do what I do. I love all the emotional side of it. I'm not a psychologist. Maybe I should train to be one. But that whole emotive side of things is amazing. So I want people to get emotional.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that story. And you brought about my cheesy grin because I get excited, because that's exactly, you know, what passions can do. And I love the flow-on effect now to her husband. It's, yeah, love that. Beautiful. So I guess this leads me to my final question then. So what great advice have you got for someone who, you know, would love to get started?
Coaching isn't necessarily for everyone. So if you think that you are somebody that could use a bit of help, a coach is fantastic for that sort of stuff. And, you know, I think having somebody in your corner to back you and to encourage you and push you or hold you back and make decisions with you is infinite. Like it's so valuable, so valuable. So I would encourage people to, if they're interested, if they like, you know, what we've been talking about today and that type of approach, then get in touch with me at Go Run Australia. But there's running groups all around Australia, all around the world, that are doing some weird and wonderful things, and they are great sources of camaraderie, of of support for you in what you're trying to do. I can't think of a more open and inclusive environment than Parkrun, for example, and something that's doing amazing things for community public health is I think that's right up there. So try a local parkrun, go walk it. Like, people take an hour to do that, and they walk around with their dog and their pram, and that's fine. In fact, I've done that a few times. So it's I think finding a group or a place where you meet people with like-minded, not goals, but like-minded passions is a great start. And yeah, kind of build from there. Let it take you where it takes you, rather than necessarily prescribing what it needs to be already. The analogy I use with people with their running is, they say, "Oh, I want to do this pace on my watch," and I'm like, "Well, what if you could go faster, or what if you could go longer, or whatever?" But your watch doesn't tell you that. Don't necessarily set the limits right up front. But again, that's the type of discussion that I have with a lot of the guys I coach. And my coach, my other coach, Kylie at Go Run, she's just phenomenal at doing some of that stuff as well. She's got a 12-month, just over a year-old baby as well. So she's got back into her own running post baby, and it has those real experiences. We've got those real experiences of how tough this can be, doing it on your own. And so, just encourage you to reach out, really, and see where it takes you.
Yeah, I love that, and I really have enjoyed this chat as well. And I think what you've expressed is a deeper side to passions and running as well. I think we get so caught up that because maybe we can walk, we should be able to get out and run as well. And it's coming back to your why, and not forcing anything, not pushing yourself to run because you're seeing other people out there. And if you do take it up running, just stick to yourself, be authentic to yourself, and not compare to anyone else, because everyone's on a different adventure and different stage. So really profound chat, Chris. I appreciate your time in sharing this, and I'm sure there's a lot of women out there, particularly the ones that come to me, who would love to get started in running, that would really take a lot from this chat.
Great.
So thank you, and I wish you a very happy Find Your Passion Day on November 15th.
Yes, of course.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers. Bye-bye.